go through it.
All right. We'll see. Good evening. I'd like to... Sorry, let me try again. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. We are here in legislative chambers and also have a Google Meet set up for any of the members of the public who would like to make public comment. We'll start off with the roll call.
Ms. Aronson,
Present.
Dr. Chang,
Here.
Ms. Poland,
Here.
Dr. Steinberg,
Here.
Dr. Thomas-Farquharson,
Here.
Ms. Wilcox, Mr. Zdanowitz,
Here.
Student Representative Lillian Sweeney, Rachelle Yerbelli.
Thank you. And Rachelle, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have a revision to the agenda order, so we will move to public communications. And before we move to the Google Meet, is there anyone in the room who wants to make public communication? Seeing none. Moving to those who've signed up to speak, is Brian Fleming in the meeting? I don't think so. I'll move on to Catherine Grace Wright Goodson. And
Good evening. My name is Catherine Grace Wright Goodison. I live at 119 Kirkwood Road, and I am a sophomore at Hall High School. Tonight, there will be a reading of a draft for a new educational equity policy. As a student that will be served by the policy, I wanted to bring my voice. We want you to know that students want to be involved, and we will be discussing our ideas concerning the equity policy in the first meeting of a student group called the Student Equity and Diversity Council, which will be held on Tuesday, May 25th from 3 to 4 p.m. Thank you for your time and your commitment to all students in West Hartford Public Schools.
thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We don't have any. We'll move right into new business. And a motion by Amanda Aronson, Lorna Thomas-Farquharson, and Liz Wilcox to accept the new policy 1800 regarding educational equity. This will be the first reading. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education accept as a first reading the following new policy, which is proposed by the Board of Education Policy Subcommittee. So I think we'll have a motion and a second, and then we will have the reading.
So moved, Amanda Aronson.
Moved by Amanda and seconded?
Second.
Seconded by Lorna Thomas-Farquharson. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Amanda.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We, Dr. Thomas-Farquharson, Ms. Wilcox, and I are the members of the Policy Committee, and we are going to present as a first reading Policy 1800, Educational Equity. I will provide an overview of how the policy is structured and why, and how it was informed, and Ms. Wilcox and Dr. Thomas-Farquharson will then read the policy aloud and clarify what happens next. So the first thing to mention is its name, Educational Equity. As we know, equity is different from equality. An equality policy would mean that our district would plan for all students the same way. But our students are not the same. They have different gifts, different backgrounds, different needs, different learning styles, and they arrive to the classroom each day with different lived experiences and having had different levels of access to education, health, and wellness support. So that is why our district does its planning with an equity mindset. We think critically about how best to support our students as individuals. This policy confirms that this is our district's approach, and it offers clarity as to what we mean when we say that and what that means for our planning. The second thing to mention is its format. Our policies generally follow a consistent structure, and we chose to expand that structure a little to put the mission of the West Hartford Public Schools and our equity and anti-racism vision statement at the top of the page just before the policy introduction to reinforce how the mission and the vision need to be considered in any planning. By design, our hope is that the format reinforces that all planning decisions should start with the policy guidelines, get checked to ensure they support the promises in our vision statement, and that they ultimately serve our mission. The mission of the West Hartford Public Schools, in case we don't hear it often enough, is to inspire and prepare all students to realize their potential and enhance our global community. That is a very powerful statement. It confirms that our district is concerned with a student's experience, a student's preparation, and a student's impact. We are striving for a positive impact. We also want to remind our community who our mission supports. We are caretaking a pre-K through 12 environment. we have a significant impact on the development of a child's foundation as a human being. The quality and content of the education a child receives in our district will have a direct impact on that child's future safety and quality of life. That is an immense responsibility. We want to continue to approach our work with this in mind, so that if every single one of our students came in here one by one, we could look each of them in the eye and tell them honestly that we are not only making our best effort within our means to help them learn, grow, and feel good about themselves, but that we are also trying to cultivate graduates who are inspired to make a positive impact in the world and who want to support the safety, success, and wellness of other people. So how is this policy informed? Well, the process of informing this actually started quite a long time ago, but a key point came during the early years of Mr. Zdanowitz's service on the board, actually, when he and his board colleagues at the time voted to begin a more clear commitment to equity. A full-time position was created, and over the past year and a half, that position has expanded to become our Office of Equity Advancement. That expansion has helped the district organize more formal family and community engagement, gather significant input and feedback, and track it. In the past year, our experience with family and community engagement has grown to a whole new level, and because of that, the amount of input and feedback we were able to collect about equity and our understanding of what our community wants deepened and expanded in scope. Our school-based equity, diversity, and inclusion parent groups worked tirelessly to create opportunities for community learning, and they conveyed family input and concerns. Over a dozen different organizations in town unified to meet monthly as part of our district's One Community for Equity group. Parents, students, and community professionals joined our advisory committees last summer to assist with school reopenings. Social and emotional learning work groups formed to help inform our curriculum, to help our children cope with current events. And our internal Equity and Diversity Council formed a work group to help us research policies for educational equity. Weekly faculty meetings and trainings provided significant insights and feedbacks into student needs and wishes. Our community held rallies to amplify student and family voices. Parents communicated with the board, faculty, and district leadership. District leadership clarified our focus on equity and what direction we would be taking, and then heard responses to that from parents and students. And many of us on the board immersed ourselves in our own learning, both in the community and beyond, and of course conducted our own research. So when it came time to write the specifics of this policy, years of input and feedback were considered, representing many voices. We cannot thank our community enough for this level of engagement. You have strengthened the foundation of how we communicate about equity in our district, and you have created a systemic change. We are a continuous improvement district, so we will keep building on that foundation so our communication will just keep getting stronger. And we want to thank the members of our Office of Equity Advancement and our Educational Equity Work Group and the EDC for their work synthesizing all of the community feedback received over the last few years and for their research. We asked them to provide suggestions for the foundation of this policy, and they proposed a structure consistent with other policies of this nature. It has a value statement in the introduction, and then our intentions are broken down into different categories. So thank you to all of you and to the many people who have informed this policy by engaging with us over the years. We are very proud to present the first reading of Policy 1800 for educational equity, and here it is, beginning with its introduction.
Every student in the West Hartford Public Schools has the right to access opportunities and supports that cultivate their unique gifts, talents, and interests regardless of race, religion, color, national origin, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender identity, ability difference, immigration status, or any other characteristic protected by law. Every student has the right to an authentic feeling of belonging and safety. We acknowledge that current and historical systems of racism, privilege, and oppression impede student progress. Therefore, it is our moral imperative to identify and eliminate barriers and inequitable practices that perpetuate disparities across student groups. As an anti-racist organization, it is our collective responsibility to ensure full, safe, and equitable participation for all students in every area of our educational programs. We strive to reach these goals in the following way. Budget and resource allocation. The West Hartford Public Schools will strive to allocate resources and funds to meet the needs of all students, while directly targeting interventions and supports that address identified inequities and help maintain school culture that support our mission to enhance our global community. Recruitment and retention. Innovative approaches will strive to recruit and retain highly qualified, certified staff across all areas and leadership levels who reflect the diversity of our community and share our commitment to anti-racism. Deliberate investment strategies will be vital to support and retain all educators, especially those from underrepresented racial, ethnic, gender, and linguistic backgrounds. High-quality curriculum instruction and opportunity. Resources will be commissioned to ensure the narratives, lived experiences, and perspectives of students from a wide variety of backgrounds are reflected in the curriculum and provide authentic voice to reflect diversity and inclusion. In order for underrepresented students to access the full curriculum, including the areas of arts and computer science education, they must see their value as central to society. Special care will be taken to ensure that students have ongoing opportunities to see their identities represented positively in the curriculum. Curriculum review teams will include educators from historically or traditionally marginalized groups.
Professional development. Professional learning, training, and support will be designed to foster understanding of the historical and systemic root causes of inequity and offer research-based means of intentionally countering trends of predictable disparity and disproportionality. Family and community partnership, engagement, balance, representation. We will strive to foster and maintain parent, caregiver, and community partnerships that honor and celebrate the strengths and assets of diverse identities and experiences to support student wellness and success. A balanced representation of home and school partnership will help inform identity and address challenges encountered. Environment and climate. We will strive to ensure that students, staff, and families are valued, respected, and heard. Discrimination, bias, or harassment towards any individual or group will not be tolerated. We will encourage all members of the school community to possess a feeling of individual ownership of this responsibility to ensure safe and nurturing learning environments. Accountability, structures, systems, and data analysis. The WHPS Continuous Improvement Plan will delineate structures, accountability, systems, and metrics that enable the identification and analysis of inequities in access, opportunities, and outcomes for all students, and in particular, those groups that have been traditionally and historically marginalized. We will utilize equity-conscious data collection measures and disaggregate data to support clear reporting on equity goals and outcomes. So where do we go from here? This is the first reading. We are planning to have our second reading in June at the June Board of Ed meeting, the June 1st Board of Ed meeting. However, from now until then, we certainly want to hear from you. We heard a caller who made reference to
wanting to hear the voice of young people, we want to hear the voice of adults as well. So yes, we do have a Board of Ed meeting on May 18th. At that time, please feel free to call in with your comments. We have open comments at the beginning of meetings or at the end of meetings. But also feel free between then to email the Board of Ed with your comments and suggestions. Although we have the second reading on June 1st, at that time, that second reading will encompass all of the suggestions that we have received from then until now. It's important to note that what we are presenting today is a reflection of our community voice, and we need to hear from you in order for that to happen. At this time, I'll pass it to our colleague Liz for her comments.
Just some final thoughts. I'm pleased to be able to present this policy tonight. It's been a collective effort putting pen to paper to draft our current equity policy. And while this is a new policy, the ideas expressed are not new. We as a district have been committed to equity for some time. Dr. Haskins will continue her work as Director of Equity Advancement and be responsible for the implementation of the policy. And I'm looking forward to seeing the progress that will result from this work.
And for my thoughts, I have to say this process has certainly been one that I greatly appreciate being on the policy committee. Have to genuinely say that this was a collective effort, a collective voice that did not take into account party, it took into account people. It took into account the human spirit. And I want to thank Liz and I want to thank Amanda so much for your support with that, and of course Andy as well, and all of the persons that have played a role in that. What we are speaking now is putting forth something in words. However, it's up to us collectively, and also those of you who are watching, to put it forth in action. And for us to set aside and rather to take this time to acknowledge the policy that's important when we educate our young people. We must remember our young people will be our leaders for tomorrow, so we have to invest in them today. Madam Chair?
Thank you. I want to thank the policy committee for its work and appreciate the first reading. Are there any questions by members of the board? Mark?
So as a previous policy member, we all kind of take our turns. I did it for quite some time and I enjoyed the process, and I know there was a lot of work and consideration and collaboration that took place behind the scenes. So thank you for that. I know this just didn't happen overnight, so thank you for all that you put into this. I guess my question is that, and first I love this and support it, and is that we talk about will not be tolerated and use words like that. What part of the policy, or what, when you go into an instance when, say, this policy is not adhered to, where is what policy does this represent? And sometimes we see other policies that are attached to this so if there was an incident where something took place, do we need that in here? Where's the policy for the punishment, I guess, not the toleration, the further along? So, you have this, someone does not adhere to it, what's the potential punishment, and how do we address that in the policy, and or is it addressed somewhere else, and do we attach that policy to this one?
If I could, Andy, first, just, yeah, and that's actually a really interesting take in terms of at policies at the bottom. You'll see links to other legislative policies and policies we have. I think it's probably, and I'm not on the committee, so I'm curious, I think there's probably too many for it to link to all of them. That could fall under guidelines in terms of how those are set up in other policies. Guidelines that could attach to this over time. That could be developed separately. That's a possibility. Or it just automatically falls under those policies, which we could, as you say, link here. These are the attached policies that also relate. I'm not sure about your thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you, Mark. And as Tom said, it really, in asking that question, and the committee did ask that question of our council. As you know, Jessica is a part of the committee. And her reasoning and her thought at this point was that we didn't need to link to other policies or to the legal backgrounds, because this, as the board statement and a policy, is really an overarching vision and goal of the of the district and of the board. Everything else, as we're examining other policies, as we're working through procedures and such, will be with this then in mind, almost as a frame that we're using in examining that. And so we've identified, and the policy committee has identified some additional areas that we want to start looking at next year to see whether or not this in fact changes our approach on some of those other policies.
So to your point, almost that this policy would then be added as policy review as a subset to those policies. I get that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Other questions or thoughts? Jason?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that question because I think consequences are important, but I'm also inspired by the language of the policy and I understand there's a kind of ecosystem of policies that this will activate, and what I'm thinking about is just the notion of punishment as a consequence, and to think of the way that this policy is directed at learning and education, and if there are behavioral or other kinds of breaches of that it activates a kind of reinvestment in education and reinvestment in the things that the district does well. So I think there's a risk of taking a punitive approach to a policy that is designed to lift everyone, and in doing so, any deviation from that could lead someone to not being a part of that, right? So, as you were talking, I was thinking about other possibilities. I just wanted to bring in that kind of reflection about how I'd like to see, those kinds of values represented also in the consequences, So I'm not sure if that added anything, but it was something that your question made me kind of reflect on.
No, if I could, Jason, that's an interesting point. I don't know if I'm going to step on your toes, Mark. And that's something that as you do policy review, then you can look at other policies in light of this policy and, okay, how does that change that policy? And it is something that I think this board needs to assert as it moves forward, that education is a key component with our children, because frankly, I've sat here for 7 years in this position and 5 years before in Andy's position, and when a child has violated the spirit or the rules of this, the response is often not about education. It is people want punishment, and it's one of the times that we've taken a lot of heat when we've erred towards education. And so that's a worthwhile discussion in our other policies and how it relates to this. And I'm glad you brought it up.
Tom, that's kind of the road I was going down too, but there are instances that when prior to this policy and breached, yes, I think there probably was some punishment, but it was also an educational tool, because I remember some town events that things happened, and yes, people acted wrong, but it was a big educational, and I think you looked at it that way, because it was a point that said, listen, hey, this happened, let's fix this, this shouldn't happen again. And, without getting too specific, because you don't want to read open wounds and things, but, there was a Hall Conard thing, and we haven't seen any of that, and you addressed it with, I think, an educational piece. So prior to this policy, there were some good to your point, I guess there was some really good stuff going on anyway, right? Because, the kids looked at what they did wrong, kind of looked in the mirror, internalized it, and said, yeah, this was really, so, yeah, what you're saying is intriguing, obviously, and I think some of that has already taken place. And I wouldn't imagine, the continuous improvement again, right? That's a really insightful thought, so.
Amanda?
Thank you. And that also is the spirit of what we were thinking in writing this too, is that how are we maintaining a learning environment? And one of the things we talked about was that as we move forward, if there are other policies that this touches, we want to be able to make that a slow process so that the community can be involved in understanding those policies if they need to evolve, so that we can have conversations about the true root of discipline, which is to learn, and to have that mindset. And it can take a while for parents also to kind of wrap their heads around that. And so we thought that there would be great value in slowing down that policy process for anything additional so that we can really build in that education. Our community has been speaking loud and clear that they want to be involved in two-way communication. And this year, there's been a lot of opportunities, especially through that one Community for Equity work group that meets once a month, where there's an agenda, there's organized discussion, and some really good conversation is stemming from that. So I think these are the kinds of conversations that we hope this will begin to encourage, and to have the students involved with that along the way. And to make sure their parents are taking part in that is really going to make all the difference. And, whether that happens in other communities, I don't know, but that certainly seems to be in the best interest of children when we really want to make sure we always remember that we're in a learning environment.
Thank you. Others? Lorna?
Thank you. I would be remiss if not acknowledging Rosina and the work that you do and the leadership role that you play. Because with what we're talking about right now in terms of the educational piece, in terms of learning from the experience, you have done a wonderful job with that, and very much appreciate your collaboration in this effort and being willing to take on the charge of helping with the educational piece moving forward. So just wanted to certainly recognize your contributions as well.
Just a question, I guess, to the members of the committee. When I read this, it seems in a way really innovative. And I love the fact that we're putting this down in writing. But it also feels to me like when I read through the paragraphs on budget and resource allocation, recruitment and retention, curriculum, professional development, family and community partnership, environment and climate, and accountability, this reflects the work that we are mostly already doing. Am I correct in sort of feeling that way? This is not as innovative, other than the fact that we're now putting it down in writing in one place to guide us in the future. So I guess that's a question to the members of the committee.
I think you read that right, Deb, and that's really what I felt when we were drafting this, that this was a codification of really the beliefs that we have, but it's good to have this in writing, and it's good for someone to be able to reference that these are our views. And I think that, to build off what Lorna was saying, having Dr. Haskins as part of the team and kind of being at the forefront of having an equity officer is something that, we really have to acknowledge. We do believe in this work, and we are doing this work. So this is our policy, but there's still a lot of work to do. And Dr. Haskins is going to really lead us and show us our blind spots and let us know what the community is thinking, and being able to fill in those gaps and adjust. If there's something that we need to work harder on, we can work harder on it. So yeah, I'm excited about the policy, and I think it gives us a lot of room to innovate even more.
Yeah, I appreciate that, hearing that, and it's also important for people to understand that once we have a policy in writing, that does help guide the future boards of education, because it's, whereas the 7 of us around this table now are committed to this work. That doesn't mean that's always going to be the boards of education in West Hartford. And to have this written down, I think really shows our commitment and what we want for the present, but also for the future in our schools. Again, just so appreciative of the work that's gone in from the board level, the staff level, and the community input as well. And looking forward to hearing from more community members over the course of the next month or so on this. Mark?
So interesting, you kind of went down a road, because when I was on the policy committee meeting, we were looking at what's the old way to copy? I forget, what's that called? Yeah, we were looking at some of those in our policy, and it was dated. You know, it was like 1978 September, right? And so, because there will be a new Board of Ed that will review this at some point, and things may have to change. So I guess my only addition to this, because I see that the equity and racism vision was adopted in 2020, that put a date on here. Did I miss that? Well, exactly. So
When we adopt it, that goes on the bottom.
I just didn't see it here, so
Down at the bottom of the.
so that it's a live document, stays relevant, and that people. So, okay.
Any further discussion on this for tonight? Amanda?
I just wanted to mention one quick thing. Dr. Haskins, you did such a nice job putting, well, on a million things, but when you put together that email to the community announcing that we were looking at this, you had some links in there to the website. Would you mind just kind of enumerating some of the next steps that are on there? There's a form, I believe, that people can also access.
Right. First, I want to thank you all for honoring, recognizing our work, and just supporting our work through this value statement and, clear set of expectations for what our families and our stakeholders should expect of us, what we expect of ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to. I also want to really express a great sentiments of gratitude to the EDC, the research arm of the EDC, for their incredible understudy of this work and synthesizing everything that we've done, family partnership work, student input. And I also want to highlight my thought partner in this work and thank you for allowing me to have someone in the office. Dr. Scott Rashford has been a tremendous asset in helping us, and he runs oversees the accountability arm of the EDC. And so we have our own internal checks and balances system as we were summarizing and studying other districts and our past and present work. So I want to thank you for recognizing, honoring that, and summarizing that so well. So part of outreach and communication is also part of our continuous improvement plan. We definitely want all voices. We want good representation. We want to hear from people. And so we have an equity policy parent work group, parent and caregiver work group, and they've been helping us to come up with a strategic outreach and communication plan. We currently have a website, the WHPS.org/equity policy, that lives on the district website as well as on all of the schools' websites. And so that we will keep that live, we'll keep that information updated and let people know ways that they can continue to be heard. There is, in addition to what Lorna shared, that they can email the board, they can give public comment here. There's an overview by the EDI on how to give public comment, how to call in, how to sign up. Grace Goodison showed us that tonight, she knew how to do that from that communication. And so we'll continue to explore opportunities to make sure that we leave no stones unturned when outreach to families and community stakeholders and hearing their voices through multiple platforms. And so, the form that collects feedback also collects questions. And while we can't answer all questions, if we see trends of frequently asked questions, we will post them and keep everybody informed. If we think of our own, we'll do the same.
Okay, thank you so much. More to come. All right, we'll move on then to staff communications and reports, and we'll turn it over to Tom for the superintendent's report.
You can call it up and load. Yeah, we can start with that. As you're calling that up, I'll talk about. Today is, of course, and I want to mention this on behalf of the board and behalf of the town. Today is Teacher Appreciation Day, as this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and it's one of those things that my words, and sometimes no matter how many words I'm going to use on it, I can't get across my and our appreciation for our teachers and all that's happened this year. Their work, their support through the most difficult year, through the most trying times, with their own fear, with their own concerns, with their own loss that so many experienced during the course of the year, and kept being there for our children, whether it was virtual or whether it's in person. And being that steady rock for that child throughout the year and those children that were in their class. I hope and I believe that at their end of their careers, they will all believe that this was their most important year. And certainly the years coming up are going to be important and difficult with so much that we need to do. But part of life, an important part of life is being there, is showing up and being there for the children, and meeting them where they are and where they need to be, and having children that are sometimes being told, you're in danger, this could happen to you, and just this constant fear that so many of our kids have dealt with this year, and our teachers being there for them, being that stability, being that safe haven that has to be there for learning to occur. Because learning cannot happen if you don't feel safe. We know that. And for those hours during the school day, whether truncated, whether online, whether in person, our teachers have been. And I'm certainly not doing any victory laps now. We have till June 17th. But at that point, I'm getting to the point now where you can begin to see the end of this year. And I do think it's been West Hartford's greatest year in education and what our teachers have done. And that's because of our teachers. And when we get accolades and, we talk about them and celebrate them, and I'll talk about a couple in a minute, that's because of our teachers. The fierce loyalty to our schools, that's because of our teachers. Anytime people say things to me, it's because of our teachers. It's the culture, it's what they create in the classroom, it's their care, it's their concern, and their willingness to meet the demand that West Hartford, we said something when Rick talked about our non-tenure review process. We said top 10% of all teachers is what we look for. Commitment to excellence, meaning that potential for excellence, that you're still striving in your 30th year of teaching the way you did in your second year of teaching. And that's the challenge that our teachers are meeting. And I just want to thank them more this year than I ever could have in the past for teacher appreciation. Let them know that they are certainly appreciated by the community. I have a couple honors before I get to the Teacher of the Year finalists, and this has been in the media, and I thank Ronnie Newton for her coverage. And Ronnie typically gets a press release and won't tell me from U.S. News and World Report, and I find out, okay, tomorrow I need to find out about this because Ronnie knows it. Ronnie knows during the day, and I can find out at midnight. But Holland Conard's success, once again, U.S. News and World Report, and I've done charts and related to it. Our two high schools, being amongst the top 2% of American high schools, 2.4% of American high schools, our two high schools being recognized for what they do in raising our children and educating our children and being 1 and 2 in Hartford County, and being in the top 10, top 11, 12 in the state year after year. And I think it's nice that they flip back and forth over who's on top of the other seemingly every year, because it just goes to show the small, they're both exceptional. And no ranking should be why somebody chooses a school, because rankings can be skewed. The metrics they put in can be skewed. But, one of the things people talk about is, is it just people in AP classes? Do you just have, look who's in our AP classes compared to the rest of the state. Look who's in our AP class compared to the rest of the country. And we're not satisfied because it's not fully representative. But we do open our classes up. We do beg our children to challenge themselves. And there's ways to play with numbers, and I can tell you we don't. We could get way more AP exams if we wanted to. I mean, we don't open advanced placement to 9th graders. I get calls about it every year. We could have way more numbers in there and be number 1 in the state if we wanted to. That's not what drives us. It's a nice ancillary benefit of what we do that we're recognized that way. It's nice to get outside validation. But even with that, I'll say, that validation for Conard and Hall, that's about all of our teachers. That's about all of our schools in the district, and recognizing that work, that it can't just start in 9th grade. It has to start earlier. But the culture isn't, people make a mistake and think it's a culture of achievement. It is not a culture of achievement. That's a byproduct. It's a culture of challenge. And prove to yourself that you can do something. And the mindset being, we'll be damned if we tell any kid you can't do it. And that's what's special. And so when we look at West Hartford's rankings, and we know this, and we know the celebration that happens, it's just another piece of validation that makes me proud that this has been where I've been able to spend my career, because I've learned from it and it's seeped into me. We had another great recognition. It's my honor to share that the Connecticut Music Educators Association Outstanding Music Educator for 2020-2021 is none other than our own Dr. Amanda Leon Guerrero. This is a huge honor. This is thrilling. She's at Webster Hill, and she was selected by the state committee based on submitted materials and information based on her teaching experience. And there will be a ceremony for her at the end of the school year, but the outstanding music educator in the state is from West Hartford, and we're so proud of Amanda, and congratulations, and it certainly is fitting that comes from West Hartford. One announcement before I get to the Teacher of the Year finalists. Dan Zatoon will announce to the staff tomorrow and families tomorrow, and I will share with you tonight. I am thrilled to announce the appointment of Melissa Hickey as Hall's new assistant principal. Melissa has been serving in this role this year. She's no stranger to Hall. She's been interim principal this year. She's been an English teacher at Hall for the past 10 years. She's a graduate of Eastern Connecticut State University for her bachelor's degree, received master's degree from University of St. Joseph's, 6-year in administration from Sacred Heart. She is innovative. She is passionate. And the one thing that comes across every time I talk to Melissa, and members of the executive team talk to Melissa, it's always about the kids. And when we're talking about teachers during teacher evaluation, Melissa immediately talked about their outreach with children that she knew through her outreach with children. We're talking about home visits, family visits. She knows the families. What came through so clearly throughout this process is that she is all about the kids and fiercely devoted to kids. And we are very excited for her to join our leadership team. And so with that, if one of you could come up and help out. Teacher of the Year process is rigorous and begins with nominations from other teachers. Oh, you have the clicker. Oh, okay. I don't know how these newfangled things work. Nominees, so it's nominations from other teachers. I want to make something clear. This isn't something that I do, nor the members of the executive team. This is a teacher-driven process. I find out literally right before the meetings who our nominees are. Nominees submit a resume, an essay, and recommendations. Finalists have a lesson videotaped, and the final 3 are then formally interviewed by the Teacher of the Year committee. And these are our finalists, and the winners, not the winner, the Teacher of the Year single person will be announced later this month. And let me start with the first nominee, Chelsea Smith. Chelsea Smith is a 6th grade English language arts teacher at Bristow Middle School. Chelsea has her 092 certification in educational leadership. She has a Master of Education in Secondary English Education, a Bachelor of Arts in English with a minor in History. In fact, she's also taught social studies at Bristow over the years. She has been with us since August of 2007. She was a presenter in Connectedness Analysis, Part 3, Patterns of Reading, Writing Connections in Pre- and Post-Tests at the National Reading Conference in Los Angeles, California. She is co-author of Book Walk, Books That Move Our Teaching Forward, exploring texts that engage students and teachers in poetry. She's the middle school representative for Curriculum and Instruction Reopening Committee this past year. She's a member of the Safe School Climate Committee, Scheduling Committee, and Principals Advisory Committee. We are very lucky and excited to have Chelsea, so congratulations to Chelsea. Our second nominee, Mr. Matt West. He is an English language arts teacher at Hall High School for grades 9 through 12. Since November of 2007, Matt has taught English at Hall High School. He has his 092 certification in education leadership from Sacred Heart, a master's in education, and a Bachelor of Arts in English. Master's from University of New Haven and Bachelor of Arts from St. Michael's College. And I'm not sure I read that for Chelsea. Chelsea's 092 is from Sacred Heart. Her Master of Education is from University of Buffalo. And her Bachelor of Arts is also from the University of Buffalo. So, Matt has led building-wide cultural competence training during his time here. He's been here since 2007, as I said. He's led PD sessions on implicit bias. He has been the team mentor to numerous new teachers and inculcated them not just into the field of teaching, but into West Hartford's teaching and to the Hall community. He founded our English language art co-taught classes. He organized and moderated Human Rights Day speaking panel. He is on the Safe Schools Climate Committee. In fact, he's the co-chair. And he coordinated the National Walkout Day advisory response, deeply involved in our advisory program at Hall High School. So congratulations to Mr. West. And finally, our third finalist is Miss Laura White. Since August of 2015, Laura has taught social studies at Hall High School. She has her 092 in educational leadership at Connecticut State University. In fact, she's Dr. White because she has her EDD in educational leadership from the University of Connecticut, her Master's of Education from the University of Vermont, and her Bachelor of Arts in History from Columbia University. Laura's dissertation was a case study examining how experienced teachers adopt culturally responsive instruction through participating in a collaborative inquiry team. She's assisted in developing and building the capacity of the Future Educated Diversity Program at West Hartford Public Schools. You've seen Laura before, both as Hall's commencement speaker and for many board presentations with FEOD. She's increased enrollment of underserved service and underserved students in advanced placement courses, which she also teaches. She's established the Ethnic Affairs position for the West Hartford Education Association, and in fact received the Connecticut CEA Henry Barnard Memorial Award for her work as a teacher and in the Connecticut CEA for 2019-2020. She's collaborated and created the FACES SEL Anti-Racist and Social Justice curriculum for high schools implemented during the weekly community blocks. She's the teacher representative and contributing member of the WHPS Opening Schools Committee that strategized and planned for modifications to scheduling and logistics for this past school year. And she is deeply involved with Rosina and our equity task force over the years. So these three educators, our committee that is meeting has a difficult task in front of them as they do every year, because these are three fine educators that I am very proud to be colleagues with. And, Laura, Chelsea, Matt, they are all just the best of the best. And I know they probably feel like on this Teacher Appreciation Day, they're just representative of the hundreds of teachers that they work with in West Hartford. So, congratulations to them. And that's it for me.
No juice and cookies today?
No.
Thank you. Any questions for Tom? All right. Then I will, is Dr. Nelson here? I don't see her over there. We'll move on to staff reports and board discussions, and we'll have the presentation on our post-secondary student recovery informational report with Dr. Nelson and Dr. Morrow. Welcome back, Andy. Welcome, Dr. Nelson.
Thank you. It's been a while.
Yes.
So,
And we're not going to let you leave after this report either.
no,
I was gonna say,
just stick
Just
around.
stay where you
But
are.
even
yeah.
with that, Gretchen, is this technically your last board report?
No,
Okay,
You
you've
gave
got
me the
one.
gift of one
Oh,
more.
I did give you one more. Never mind. That's right.
So, we wanted to give you an informational update and a report on a project that we've been working on for a couple of months now, about 4 or 5 months. If you remember in the previous years, we've been looking and created opportunities for our post-secondary students in a culinary program with our kitchen, work that we've done with the greenhouse project, if you remember, from about 1.5 years ago, in our partnership with our farms, which both are fantastic. And we've been looking at opportunities to have recovery efforts for our post-secondary students who haven't been in job sites, who haven't had those opportunities, and came across the idea of a used bookstore in West Hartford. And so I will turn it over to Gretchen, who conveniently came up with this idea and then announced she was retiring. And so we won't let her live that down, so she can.
Yeah, Andy's going to be the manager of the bookstore, he says. No. So as you know, our post-secondary students are students who qualify for an IEP for transition services only. So they've earned their credits, but continue to need some support in transition types of goals and objectives. And so this past year, our students who traditionally focus about 1/3 to 1/2 of their time on vocational training were not really able to engage in that level of training or the intensity of training that they really need in order to enter the adult world in our community and continue to do the things that they love. And so this year we had a few opportunities for students to learn in community-based settings, but they were very few. We tried to replicate job type scenarios within our community to make sure that everyone was safe, which was great. We still were able to engage in our farm, and of course we still have the culinary program that's there on the campus. The idea of this bookstore came about by looking at another program in a neighboring community who's engaging in a similar situation, and they are currently bringing in adults, young adults with disabilities to work this bookstore. And we said, we can do that with a little bit of a West Hartford twist. And so we're taking a look at being able to provide another community-based site. When Andy and I had a conversation with the town, they let us know that there were an awful lot of community members who were also very interested in a used bookstore in town. So what we are proposing to do is open up a used bookstore in a convenient location within town and engage our community partners through Senior Job Bank, volunteer services, as well as we will have 52 students in our post-secondary program next year in order to run this bookstore. And so with the first year or at least 1 year under our belt, we're hoping that then we can expand this to include some of our high school students in their business classes and other opportunities for them to engage in this bookstore, as well as possibly employing young adults with disabilities who've graduated from our system who really need employment. And adult world employment for for young adults with disabilities kind of waxes and wanes with the economy. And right now it's not in good shape. And so it's really hard for young adults to find employment. And so we'd like to work within our community to make sure that happens. And I think this site would be a great opportunity for them.
Just the one thing I'd add, this is, I think, the creative use of American Recovery funds that they're designed for. That's why we're, jealous and guarded with it, because this we can do for 3 years, see what happens in the community if more opportunities reopen up with businesses. But it was becoming more and more difficult because of insurance liabilities with places for our placement of our own students. This guarantees that place. It also gives back because one of the things that the state, and I don't think with people in our 20s, I think Gretchen and I have said this before, I don't think we're always meeting our requirements ethically to our fellow human beings. And we talk about equity, and Gretchen and Rosina and I talk about this a lot. Sometimes people leave out special education from equity, and my gosh, you can't. And our work that we need to do to make sure that this meets kids where they are, but also brings our community together and brings the kids from our high schools in to work also with these other children and bring together, in the same ways you see Unified Theater do it, in the same ways, except giving opportunities for multiple age groups across the way. And what better way in West Hartford, in this educated community, than through a used bookstore? So, it's a lot of work, and these two are very aggressive in their timelines, and I've kept trying to put the reins on them as far as their timelines go. So their timeline, I may slow down over time because we want to, but just so we know, and this is an informational report, because this is the kind of thing that I want the board to know about. I want people in the community talking about, and I want as many people to know about this over time as possible. And location to be determined, announced at a later date, as we're still talking to people about that. But questions and this credit goes to these two. I mean, this everything belongs, they deserve the credit for this.
Ari?
I don't really have a question, but I just love everything about this initiative. Again, I just feel like it really speaks to the district's commitment, that our commitment to our students doesn't end at graduation. And I think that this can offer so many kind of post-secondary students. It can help, I just think that there are a lot of students who, when they graduate and they don't know what the next step is for many different reasons, it really has an impact on their self-worth and their levels of independence. And this could be an initiative that really helps to maintain self-esteem, feeling independent, self-worth. I just think it's a wonderful initiative. And again, it really just speaks to the level of commitment that the district has, that, it's not graduation and goodbye, that we see people and students for the individuals that they are and the needs that they have.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I also think that it will serve as a model program for other businesses in town. And I think if they can see that students are successful and contributing members of this, that it will inspire other businesses to also diversify their employment opportunities.
Other questions? Amanda, and then Jason.
I love this. When you first mentioned this in theory, it took me a while to digest what you were saying, and the more we have learned about this, and the more we think about what the kids have been doing and how wonderful that has been for them, and then what's happened during the pandemic, when I think about the families we know in our own personal lives who have adult children who are in this position, it is heartbreaking to see what happens when those young people get to a certain age where there aren't any opportunities, and then for families trying to figure out how to have that engaging, stimulating experience every single day. And I don't know that I would have fully appreciated that struggle if I hadn't known people in my own life. And so the more I thought about that, and this town loves books. I mean, we have more than, I can't even count how many book clubs are going on. So to think of how exciting it is to have yet another bookstore in the community, especially a small one, and to have an opportunity for all the adult groups in the community to get involved. But I see the impact on my kids when they were in middle school and in that stage of development where, it's hard for them to think outside their own lives. When we'd go to the grocery store, or we would go to places where they could interact with people in the community who had been part of special education programs, almost every one of them would say, I went to Hull High School in 1970, and I was part of a program, and my kids, year after year after year, started to develop the relationships with the kids, and it opens them up in a whole new way. And it just has such an impact on the whole community that I think the idea of the application of this is so special, and I'm really excited about it. And I think you're right about the model. So I think this is terrific, and I just love this town because I can't wait to see what happens with the engagement, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are going to want to help with this, and it's probably going to surpass anything that you've even thought about yet, knowing our community. So this is really exciting.
Justifying the timeline.
Yeah, I think, I'm usually, you know me, I'm usually for the slow timeline. I think this one is, pedal to the, I think you're on track with that.
Thank you, Amanda.
Sorry,
I really
Tom.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
glowing
I think you're
endorsement.
spot on, because people are going to help. This community, people will help.
Yeah.
Jason?
Yes, also I have a lot of books I'd like to donate.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, this is fantastic, and I really appreciate the district's, creativity and thinking about this moment to not just address recovery, but to invent new things that will sustain us. And I just had to reflect on the role of used bookstores in my life. They were essential places for me to discover things and to meet people, to hear authors read their work, to meet authors, to share writing. It's not just a place where you can buy a book. But these are, places where ideas and people circulate, and it's really important. And I am so excited for this. So thank you for working on this.
Thanks.
Mark?
All right, were we precluded from having stock purchases on this? Because this is how Amazon started in 1994. So I just want to make sure that maybe the board could jump on that. But no, this is good stuff, and I appreciate that. And the timeline, well, it's got to be done before you retire. So, I mean, that's the charge right there, Mr. Moore.
I'm just afraid Andy and I are going to be spending our summer checking out of here and walking to sell books. So,
No, we have a plan.
Actually, go ahead, Lorna.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I share the sentiments that colleagues have shared as well, very much in support of this. And I know that it's an opportunity for post-secondary students to continue their educational learning. However, very much see that it really is mutually beneficial because so much learning potential for other students and for the community and for adults as well. And so thank you for allowing, encouraging for that type of setting for there to be a mutually beneficial exchange of learning and continued growing.
Thank you.
So all of those things, but also a question. Can you talk a little bit about the funding for this? And I know we mentioned there's federal funding, and in the report, there's a mention of the need for a full-time program manager, so.
Yeah, our working with Liz, this really is the perfect use and really the definition, as Tom mentioned, of the Recovery Act funds. And so we've identified between the program manager, business manager position, which is really equivalent to the culinary director that we had hired previous at that same kind of level. The rent, utilities, our supplies and materials, we're estimating between $140,000 and $150,000 per year. Now, as Tom will point out, that's the initial expenditure that doesn't include sales. So we're expecting, to, of course, recap and get part of that back. But
It's a little bit different position in that typically we talk about FTEs and teaching positions. This wouldn't be a teaching position. This is somebody, technically will advertise, we'll have teachers working with them, but this will be somebody on the business side that has experience in this field and also hopefully experience working with kids and the right kind of person for this position.
We would look to employ that person full year, a year-round position, and their, hours would probably be Tuesday through Saturday kind of thing, so we can cover the retail aspect of it, and this person would coordinate volunteers as well as liaison with the teachers in bringing students in and be there.
That was one of my other questions, was what do you envision the hours to be? And so something like Tuesday through Saturday.
Tuesday through Saturday.
yeah, we think based on initially
10 to 6,
Yep.
kind of hours.
we'll have different times for students to then be there to catalog some of the intake and that type of thing. So it's really once we get it going and it sort of takes its own pulse there.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. We're very excited
Thank you.
and can't wait to hear more.
So are we.
All right, we are going to move on to routine matters and the financial report. And the approval of the financial report for the period ending March 31st, 2021. And I'll start with a motion to approve the financial report for the period ending March 31st. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Thank you, Mark. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lorna. And I will present the financial report this evening. So if you turn to page 6 of your board books. There's not a lot of changes this month from last month's financial report. I will highlight just a couple of changes that are notable. One is that we have just a few minimal salary changes. That's due to some vacancies that become harder to fill later in the year. There are no real changes. I'm now on page 9, by the way. No real changes in benefits. We do expect to save some money in the pupil transportation. We should save about $500,000 this year, and that is mostly due to the fact that we did not have transportation for summer school last year. It was a remote summer school. And the reduced need for transportation to extracurricular activities like field trips and away games for the parts of the year that we did not have away games for sports. As far as the tuition line item, 5430, we are getting a higher reimbursement from the state for tuition than we had expected to. So that is welcome good news. That will help our bottom line as well. We have a little bit of savings in the all other purchased services line. That is due to, again, lower costs for travel, equipment maintenance, and so forth as a result of the pandemic. We are, there's a new line here that says designated for 21-22, right near the bottom of that page. And that is a line that will allow us to bring our savings forward to next year. So some of those savings that I've mentioned, we'll be able to use those in next year's budget. That's consistent with the budget that we adopted at our meeting last month. So that will be in our non-lapsing account. If you turn to page 10 for the grants funds, I always like to say this, above the line are the grants that we have another year for, below the line are going to end this year. Not a lot of changes here yet. The big news is going to be when we have all 3 of the new federal grants listed. So as a reminder, we have what we call the ESSER 1 grant, which was part of, I think, the CARES Act from last March, if I remember correctly. Those funds are on this page, and they are, where are they? They are about 2/3 of the way down, 502062. Those funds go through September 30th of 2022, and we've basically used them all. It's $902,000. ESSER 2, which is not yet listed here, the reason it's not listed is that the state is currently reviewing our application. So once they approve our application, which we expect that they will, that will be listed on our grants report. That funding is $4.3 million, and we have until September 30th of 2023 to spend those funds. Those programs are going to be things like trying to assist students who became disengaged over the pandemic, some additional special education teachers, learning recovery, and so forth. The third federal grant is from the American Rescue Plan Act, and that was the act that was passed in March by Congress. And those funds have not officially been awarded, and we actually don't know exactly how much we're getting, but we suspect it's likely to be about $10.3 million. And those funds go through September 30th of 2024. So it's a little bit complex. I'm sure you'll all memorize all of that. But once all of those funds are officially awarded and the state has approved our applications for the use of them, you'll start to see those filter in on this page of our financial report as well. But other than that, there aren't any real highlights there on the grants page. Moving to the special funds report, again, not a lot of changes here. The big change for this year, just looking across the past year, is facility rentals. We really, as you can see, don't have a lot going on with facility rentals because we're trying to keep our schools as few people in there who are not students and teachers as possible. But hopefully that will turn around for next year. And finally, nutrition services. And we actually had quite a good month this month. We, compared to other months this year, we had increased meal counts this year, and we actually asked Liz and Tim Brzezinski to run a count of meals at every school. And at every school in the district, we had more meals in March than we had in February. So we were starting to see the trend go in that direction, which is helpful. And that's obviously because the middle school and high schools are now back in with all the students in every day. So more kids are taking lunches. We also have an increased reimbursement rate from the federal government, which is helpful. So we're still expecting a loss, quite a big loss in nutrition services for this year, but better than it was last month. So things are on the upswing. We're now expecting an operating loss of $398,000 in this account, whereas last month, if you remember, I think we reported an expected loss of about $500,000. So things look better. We will be hopefully using our ESSER 2 funds to fill in the gaps for this, as long as the state approves that, which again, we suspect they will because that was a specific question that was asked to the State Department of Education. The other reason we think that's a good idea is this account, the Nutrition Services Fund, had been doing really well before. This is an account that is really self-sustaining based on the reimbursement we get from the federal government, from the state government, from the funds that people spend for lunches and a la carte items as well. And so once we're back in the swing of things in a more normal-ish environment, we think this account will become self-sustaining again. So we just want to fill in that gap with the ESSER funds. That is my report. Are there any questions or additions if I missed anything? All right. Without further discussion, I will try your minds on the motion, and the motion, as a reminder, is to approve the financial report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? And the ayes have it, and the motion passes. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Andy. All right. Moving on to approval of the minutes. I will seek a motion to approve the minutes of the April 20th, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Liz, seconded by Amanda. Any discussion? With no discussion, I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Well done. Information and reports. Are there any reports from board members, from other boards and organizations? All right. No other information and discussions. Then we will take the reports from student representatives, and I'll ask Lily and Rochelle to join us. And you can come up and speak at the podium. So Lily first. Thank you.
I have to press a button. Oh, okay. This year, Hall's CIAC Scholar Athletes are Natalie Lytle and Isaiah Lizardi. The Scholar Athlete Award honors students who have made significant athletic and academic achievements while maintaining good citizenship and involvement in the community. Natalie is a three-sport captain in field hockey, indoor track, and outdoor track, who has received All-State and Academic All-State honors in field hockey, and CCC All-Academic honors in all three sports. Isaiah is also a three-sport athlete in football, outdoor track, and indoor track, who has received All-State honors in football and outdoor track, all CCC honors in... Oh, there's a lot of honors here. All CCC honors in football and indoor track, and CCC All-Academic honors in all three sports. Next year, he will play football and run track at Middlebury College. Congratulations to both of these hardworking student athletes on this major accomplishment. Since I announced the details of senior prom at the last meeting, the capacity has been raised from 200 to 400 students, which means that the entire senior class will be able to attend their prom. Very good news. AP exams will begin in less than 2 weeks, so students in AP classes have been working very hard to review and prepare for their upcoming tests. Some exams will be taken remotely online, while others will be taken in school with pencil and paper. Students have received individual instructions from their teachers as to how their exams will be taken. This week is Teacher Appreciation Week, and to celebrate, Hall is holding a gift card raffle for teachers every day during the morning announcements, and students can write a special message to their teachers on the Teacher Appreciation Jam board. Throughout the week, PTO will provide a breakfast from Sally and Bob's, lunch from Ocho Cafe, and an ice cream truck available for the teachers. On behalf of all Hall students, we are so grateful for our teachers' hard work and dedication to our education, especially during this crazy and very unpredictable year. Finally, I would like to give a statement on the educational equity policy. The Hall community is proud of its diversity in all its forms, and not only should we celebrate this diversity, we should also recognize and learn from our shortcomings to make the school a more inclusive and equitable environment. Passing an educational equity policy would do just that, and I hope that the board considers feedback from various members of the Hall community, especially from the students who deeply care about this issue and would see the firsthand effects of this action, to pass a policy that is best suited toward achieving equity. And I would also like to thank Catherine Grace Wright Goodison for acknowledging the Student Equity and Diversity Council that will be meeting soon on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
As Lily just mentioned, I first wanted to thank the board for proposing the educational equity policy. On behalf of the students, I just wanted to say that we find taking steps to eliminate systemic racism and barriers for educational opportunities very important. We are excited that the board is proposing a written and actionable policy to meet these goals, and we as students will do our part in making sure we foster a welcoming learning environment. Mr. Duarte will keep the Conard community and the Conard students updated through his weekly Thursday notes. And students will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide their opinion on this policy. As Lily mentioned, AP exams have begun this week at Conard, both in person and virtually, and will continue until the end of the month. Last Wednesday, Conard's World Language Honor Society induction ceremony took place, where 175 students were inducted and 53 students who earned the Seal of Biliteracy were also recognized. 2 Fridays ago, Conard wrapped Conard's Earth Week, where students took part in a number of educational activities that helped raise awareness on climate change and environmental sustainability. These included daily social media posts on Conard's Instagram, informational recycling videos, a special edition Earth Week series in the Conard Current, and an Earth Week virtual movie night, and also a tree planting activity in Conard's courtyard. Prom tickets for Conard Senior Prom will go on sale this week. We are so glad that every Conard senior who wants to go will have the opportunity to attend. Next week, Conard's band, orchestra, and choir students will host a music concert for families at the outdoor Simsbury Meadows Music Center. I also wanted to congratulate Conard's Jeffrey Rosberg for being elected to the Connecticut Association of Student Councils Board. We are so glad to have a Conard voice at that level. Thank you.
Thank you both, and good luck to all of the students who are taking AP exams and or getting ready for prom in a few weeks. Future business. We have 2 more meetings this year. Tuesday, May 18th, here at 7 o'clock, and Tuesday, June 1st, also here at 7 o'clock. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Mark?
Not an agenda item, but I was just wondering, and Tom, or maybe the students, when do we find out the new student-elected Board of Ed reps?
I will check with Julio and Dan. Do either of you know if the election's been announced yet? Gotcha. So
Normally they're announced at one of our meetings, right? Or
last year Hall's was, but Conard's wasn't yet, right? So it depends. I'll check with them on what the timeline is with Julie and Dan.
All right, great. Comments from visitors. We do have somebody who's joined us in the Google Meet. I believe it's Brian Fleming. So, Brian, if you wanted to provide comment, you can do so now.
Hi, this is Brian Fleming. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just had a quick question concerning the meeting, the way that it started, or at least opened up, and I apologize. I think the woman's name was Aronson. Is that correct?
Yes. I will say we don't typically respond to public comment, but yes, I can answer that question.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So one of my concerns was the way that it opened up is that the policy was not an equality program, but was an equity program. And I guess the question that I would have, and I know that you can't respond specifically to my questions, but at least a food for thought for everybody here is that when it comes to equity versus equality, my main concern is whenever anyone says that there's a program that is not founded on equality, but rather equity, that's concerning to say the least. And the reason why I say that is we specifically have the U.S. Constitution, specifically the 5th and 14th Amendment, that addresses discrimination. And my concern moving forward with this type of program, especially after hearing the reading, I think there's a lot of language that's up for interpretation. And my concern as a parent of 3 students in the West Hartford school system is how the school board and the educators plan to roll this type of program out. There was a lot of talk, for example, about metrics and about budgetary concerns and how money is going to be allocated to promote equity, not equality. And I guess moving forward, that's something that I would like to hear some feedback eventually. I'll definitely participate in future meetings. I know this is a hot topic for many parents, and it's definitely up for debate. But that's basically what my comments and concerns are at this moment. But I definitely would like to hear more from the board on exactly what metrics they're going to be capturing and what type of programs are going to be formulated or at least designed for certain students based on equity. And we can, if that's going to be race or gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is. And at the same time, also honoring what the U.S. Constitution says about discrimination and equality. So I guess I'll just wrap it up with those questions. It's a little bit difficult to make statements without any feedback, but I'll end there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments, and I recognize how difficult it is to not be able to receive feedback, but I will just reassure the public that everything that we take in, we will consider, and anything that we hear could become part of any policy that is adopted in the future. So thank you. Thank you for being willing to share your thoughts. We do not have an executive session, and so I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Lorna. Is there a second? Seconded by Liz. And without further ado, meeting is adjourned at 8:26 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody.